Welcome back, Daily Fab Gamers. I'm Lupinefiasco, and 10 days ago, Legend Story Studios announced a new policy for ProQuest Yokohama that caused just a bit of a stir in the Flesh and Blood community. Does this new policy, which restricts ProQuest winners from entering further events, punish players for being too good? The answer is yes. I want to share my thoughts on whether punishing winners is a net positive for the community overall, react to online discourse, call out bad actors, and suggest some policy changes of my own. Before all that, please consider subscribing to my channel. It's the best free way to support me and to make sure that you see every new upload from Daily Fab Gameplay. Want to tighten and optimize your gameplay in real life? Use my affiliate link in the video description to buy your very own Codex journal, and be sure to use code LUPINE10, that's LUPINE10, at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Finally, Daily Fab Gameplay is brought to you in part by Hemel from The Bazaar. It's never been more affordable to play in the Flesh and Blood. Players have been buying the cards they need from Hemel for years. I started buying from him in 2023 and have never found a better deal. The Bazaar's prices are the lowest for singles, full sets, and class sets, including new releases. High Seas singles and more are available now and ship both domestically and internationally. Message Hemel on Blue Sky, Discord, email, or Twitter to see what he can do for you. Now grab your ladles because it's time to stir the pot. Let me reiterate it in no uncertain terms. This policy punishes winners. Regardless of anything else, LSS is saying that certain players who haven't committed any wrongdoing will not be allowed to play in the Flesh and Blood. In exchange, a greater number of unique players will win invitations to play at Pro Tour Yokohama next April. There is a whole slew of issues with the implementation, and I'm going to get into that, but first I'll say that I agree with the intention. My overall skill at the game has improved dramatically since attending PT London, and I built on that at PT Singapore. If more unique players will get to experience that level of growth by attending PT Yokohama, then we all benefit, and that's really the only positive thing I can say about this policy, which, again, I agree with the intent. I strongly disagree with the implementation. I'll start by addressing the collusion. Collusion bad. The argument is that by removing winners from the pool of players, those winners won't be able to strategically concede against their friends to push those friends into the later rounds of a tournament. Without that free pass, those friends are more likely to lose their games, and consequently, any given Pro Tour invite will go to, and this is important, be used by the most deserving player. In theory, that makes sense. In practice, any given Pro Tour invite won't be used by the most deserving player, but rather the player most likely to travel to the Pro Tour. I can only speak from personal experience, so forgive me if yours is different than mine, but strategic concessions and collusions in my area don't happen to maintain a boys club or old guard of gold foil and invite farmers. They happen because flying across the world from California to Singapore costs $12,000 plus whatever you spend on lodging and food, uses at least 5 days of PTO, and requires that you have a valid passport. Among the top 8 prizing, the Pro Tour invite is the least desirable item because only 1 or 2 people among those 8 would use it if they won it, and that number decreases as the season continues. But Lupine, you say, isn't it wrong for those other 6 people to feel pressured into pushing the privileged few into the finals? Don't they deserve to win the gold foil and living legend points that accompany the Pro Tour invite, even if they won't fly to Yokohama? Yes, absolutely. That's my point. The intention to curb collusion and maintain competitive integrity is good, but the implementation is terrible. Nothing about this new policy solves or changes anything about what I've just described, except that one of the two players in Week 1 who wants the Pro Tour invite will be replaced by someone else in Week 2. So let's talk about competitive integrity, because in lieu of a statement from LSS about their intention behind this policy, I must assume that maintaining competitive integrity among ProQuests is the goal. Restricting the ability of strong players to compete is antithetical to competitive integrity. I'll say it again. Restricting the ability of strong players to compete is antithetical to competitive integrity. You cannot say in good faith that a ProQuest, the highest level of open entry event outside of a calling, can accurately identify the best player in a region if proven best players are unable to compete. More than that, I don't know why you'd want to. I've seen a few posts from players excited that they'll be able to win local tournaments because better players can't compete after their first win. The Brody Spurlock flew across the country despite 2 ProQuests anecdote has been shared a lot. But how does that help you? The best way to improve is by playing against, and usually losing to, better players. On a moral level, restricting those players from playing is contrary to competitive integrity. On a practical level, reveling in those players' inability to play is hamstringing your own growth. There seems to be an undercurrent of pro-bashing among the discourse around this policy from bad actors, who I can only describe as mad because bad. I'll say this. If what you're looking forward to this ProQuest season is that Brody can only win 1 gold foil instead of 5, the problem is you, not him. Rather than flood social media with your bad takes, try practicing at the game instead. This segues nicely into another idea I've seen thrown around, which is that this policy gives winners a break. You won your ProQuest, so now you're done. Mission accomplished. Reward achieved. Like playing Fab at a competitive level is a chore rather than the goal. There's a misconception about why competitive players often play as many ProQuests as possible. The prize support is nice and usually covers the cost of entry and gas, but the reps are why we do it. Compared to practice games against teammates or armory games against locals, ProQuests have stakes. People, me included, give a shit when they otherwise might not. My armory opponents might be trying new heroes, or I might be distracted when I'm testing online, but everyone is locked in at a ProQuest. Telling winners to relax because they can get games anywhere is completely missing the point. For one thing, thanks, I didn't know that. More importantly, these are the games I want. Outside of the Pro Tour itself, there are no games that will better emulate those conditions than the games played to qualify for the Pro Tour. Though that's less true now when ProQuest winners, literal Pro Tour caliber players aren't allowed to play with me anymore. To summarize, despite what I believe is a positive intention, this policy doesn't prevent strategic concessions or collusions, doesn't improve or even maintain competitive integrity, doesn't benefit aspiring Pro Tour competitors, and doesn't benefit current Pro Tour competitors. All it does is punish anyone fortunate or skilled enough to win a ProQuest, and that sucks. I'm glad that LSS is taking steps to improve the ProQuest and Pro Tour experiences, and as I've said, the intent is good. While it isn't my job to develop a better implementation, and thank goodness for that, I have a few ideas for your consideration. I have heard it suggested that LSS remove gold foils from prizing to reduce the pressure to strategically concede in the finals, but I'd like to avoid making ProQuest prizing worse. Shouldn't we make it better? The current policy for Pro Tour invites is that they pass down to a ProQuest runner-up if the winner already has one. Couldn't it pass down to 3rd place or 4th, or as far down as it needs to reach anyone who hasn't won one yet? Current tournament structure wouldn't allow for this, as players finishing 5th through 8th and 3rd through 4th don't play out games to determine their placements within those ranges. The solution here is for those players to play more Fab, which, again, should be seen as a good thing. Alternatively, ProQuests could borrow from the Road to National structure and award invites to the entire top 4, or even expand it to the top 8. Not to put too fine a point on the issue, but if LSS finds it acceptable to restrict the best players from gatekeeping invites, then maintaining a semblance of exclusivity for Pro Tour invitees clearly isn't a priority. Even if it was, any given Pro Tour would have fewer attendees than Nationals events by nature of there only being a single event, and that event being costly for a large portion of the player base to attend. Current policy dictates that a Pro Tour invite, as opposed to a professional tournament invitation, is locked to the player that won it. Does this need to be the case? Allowing ProQuest winners to sell their Pro Tour invites disincentivizes strategic concessions. Pro Tour aspirants have an alternate path to their invitations, and anyone who isn't planning to attend can attach literally any worth to their prize, which they currently can't do. Slap an expiration date on Pro Tour invites to differentiate them from professional tournament invitations, and call it a day. It's been 10 days, and I still can't believe this needs to be said. It should never be LSS's policy to restrict players from playing in the flesh and blood. It's literally the name of the game. All this policy does is punish winners without addressing any of the root causes of the actual problems. The intention to reduce strategic concessions and collusions is good, but the implementation is terrible. Reduce the need for collusion by increasing the number of Pro Tour invites in a season, or increase their availability by making them transferable. Either alternative builds the player base up rather than tearing it down. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Use the comment section below to tell me how much you agree with what I've said or that I'm wildly off base. Very happy to engage on this topic, which affects a lot of my friends, my teammates, and me personally. Otherwise, catch me again next week for more Daily Fab gameplay. Until then, take care.